The stock market is more overpriced today than it was before the Great Depression and the 2008 financial crisis. And yet job losses, inflation, and poverty are way up. What's going on? How can the stock market reach a record high while the underlying economy is collapsing? Well, it's reaching record highs today. Every recession indicator we have demonstrates that this stock market is more primed to crash than at any other point in American history. If you're invested in the stock market, or if you're in any way affected by the US economy, which I think is everybody, you're gonna want to hear this. First, let me demonstrate to you just how overvalued the stock market is compared to the economy. And then I'm going to explain why the economy hasn't completely collapsed yet. And if history is a guide, when all the economic indicators say it will. There are two metrics that determine how overvalued a stock market is. The first is the Shiller Index, which takes the 500 companies in the S&P 500 and divides them by how much money they make. So if my stock price is $100 and my 10-year average earnings, adjusted for inflation, is $20, then my Shiller P/E ratio would be 100 divided by 20. Or 5. And the higher the ratio, the more inflated the stock price is. Because all it does is divide the stock's price by how much money they're actually earning. You know, the thing a company is supposed to do. In September 1929, the Shiller P/E ratio hit an all-time high of 32.6 before the Great Depression. The ratio hit 24 before the 2008 financial crisis. Today, the Shiller P/E is above 42. The only time it's ever been higher in history was when it reached 44 at the height of the dot-com bubble. But the second metric for how overvalued the stock market is the Buffett indicator, which takes the entire valuation of the stock market and divides it by GDP. It basically measures how high investors are valuing companies as opposed to the actual value of the goods and services those companies actually make. So if the Buffett indicator is higher than 100%, it basically means we're valuing the companies that produce products more than the products themselves. Have you ever heard money doesn't grow on trees? Well, for a moment, let's pretend they do. Imagine a tree that can only ever grow $10,000. Obviously, you should never value that tree more than $10,000. In a similar way, we shouldn't value companies much more than the products they actually make. Or at least Warren Buffett doesn't think so if we don't want a recession. When the Buffett indicator exceeds 100%, it's basically like valuing a tree that can produce $10,000 at $12,000 or $13,000. And then eventually people will stop buying trees because they'll realize $13,000 isn't worth producing $10,000. The Buffett indicator's previous record high was 145% just before the dot-com crash. Today, it's at 241%, which basically means that we are valuing only the publicly traded US companies as 2.5 times as valuable as 1 year of total American economic output. So with the economy so shaky, why hasn't it completely collapsed yet? Well, my first question is, are you so sure that it hasn't? It's true that the US stock market is still up, but Canada and Germany have already entered a recession. South Korea's stock market is totally collapsing, and France is one negative quarter away from official recession territory. Have you ever wondered why immigration became such a politically explosive issue specifically in the last 10 years? It's because Western economies have actually been stagnating or declining for decades. But we've been able to hide that decline by increasing immigration, because importing millions of new workers boost GDP numbers, which will boost, at least temporarily, how well a country looks on metrics like the Buffett indicator. So it's no coincidence that when Canada finally started reducing their immigration levels, they hit a recession. The underlying economy was weak for years. Immigration had just been masking it. And now that in 2025, the US reached net negative migration for the first time in a century, there are only 5 remaining pillars that are keeping the US from complete economic collapse. And those pillars are each getting shakier every day. The first pillar is easily the largest. It's AI companies. Literally, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet alone, 4 companies, have accounted for 75% of the gains in the S&P 500 in the last few years. 80% of the profits, and a whopping 90% of capital expenditure. Capital expenditure being how much money companies are spending on growing. That's insane. 4 companies are responsible for 75% of the US GDP growth. And this is why you see top economists like David Rosenberg claim that without just those 4 companies, the US would be in recession right now. And he's not alone. Thousands of analysts have made similar claims. Look at this chart that demonstrates the difference in non-residential investment with and without data centers. Basically, all the growth has come from AI companies. So if anything goes wrong with these 4 companies, or even like one of these 4 companies, we're cooked. We might be looking this gift horse in the mouth very soon. Because the tech sector has not just stopped hiring. They are laying people off in bigger numbers than any other sector. In fact, there's very little evidence that AI has led to any acceleration in productivity that would match their sky-high stock prices. As this chart demonstrates, productivity has basically kept pace with previous quarters. You know the phrase, don't put all your eggs in one basket? Well, not many people know, but the second part of that phrase is don't put your entire economy in 4 tech CEOs' meta-glasses. But I don't think we listen to that part. The second pillar artificially buoying the US economy is the bifurcation of consumer spending. While the bottom 90% of the US economy has tightened their wallets, eating out less, spending less, going on vacation less, which would theoretically hurt economic growth, the top 10% is spending more money than ever and making up for it. Why? Because the top 10% owns 93% of the US stock market, meaning they've seen their net worth soar in the last 5 years. So they're feeling comfortable. That helps them still make consumer purchases and keep company profits from sinking too low. 20 years ago, companies had to rely on the entire American consumer base. In fact, in the 90s, the top 10% were only responsible for a third of consumer spending. Today, it's half. So corporations increasingly only cater or care about the top 10%. So this means if the stock market doesn't even go down, but just starts to stagnate, the top 10%, who again own 93% of the stock market, will no longer feel so spendthrift. And since corporations already aren't getting money from the bottom 90%, corporations will no longer be making profits, their stock prices will crash, and the entire US economy will burn. The third artificial economic pillar is maybe the most volatile. After prices soared 30% in the last few years, which is just an insane number, companies like Klarna and Afterpay gave consumers the option of buying now and paying later.
Sign it. Go on, check. Sign it, check. Sign it.
You signed it.
So,
credit card debt has soared to $1.3 trillion, and increasingly, Americans can't afford to buy anything. We're putting it on our tab to pay later, and that's masking a deep economic corrosion. But that tab is coming due any day now, and many Americans are just saying they'll refuse to pay it. Almost 1 in 4 borrowers say they'll never pay off their debt, and 40% are missing payments entirely. Say you're Steve, living outside Austin, Texas, and you make $65,000 a year. 5 years ago, you could afford your life pretty comfortably, but now prices have gone up 30%. So if you're making anywhere near your same salary, you'll need to take on debt. So you start using a credit card thinking that eventually prices will come down, but they never do. And this is the story of millions of Americans right now. And we're already feeling the effects. This is not a future problem. The US last year tied for its lowest year of economic growth outside a recession since 1979. The fourth artificial lifeboat keeping the US economy from sinking is about as artificial as it gets. And that's that investors no longer believe in risk anymore, because they very justifiably believe that anytime the stock market has a downturn, the government will bail it out through any means possible. And they're kind of right, because of a total historical accident. The 2 greatest economists of the 20th century were John Maynard Keynes and Milton Friedman, who basically argued the complete opposite economic philosophy. Keynes said you can escape a recession by having the government pump money into the economy. Milton Friedman said the opposite. You should have the government pull back and let the free market steer. Well, you'd think if our government was full of educated scholars and gentlemen that they would evaluate those 2 philosophies and pick one, right? Right? No. Instead, they just decided to do both. For example, in the 2008 financial crisis, the Obama administration both signed a stimulus package and cut interest rates. And even though that borrowed on 2 opposing economic philosophies, it sent one unified message to Wall Street, that by hook or by crook, from the right or from the left, through stimulus or tax cuts, the US government will not let 2008 happen again. We will bail you out every time. And we did. The US bailed out 700 banks in 2008. Biden and Trump collectively spent $4 trillion to bail out the US economy during the 2020 recession. This has become so expected that on Wall Street there's a term called the Fed put, referring to the idea that the Fed limits how much the stock market can go down, just like buying a put on a stock limits how much a stock can go down for an individual buyer. But there's a reason this can't go on forever, and that reason is Pillar 5. The US, by far, has more debt than any other country on Earth at $38 trillion. To put that in perspective, the entire European Union has less than half that amount of debt. The US is able to borrow so much money to artificially keep the stock market and economy booming because the entire world uses dollars. So there's a high demand for US dollars. Therefore, countries are more than willing to buy US bonds and lend us money. But there's a dark side to dollars being the global reserve currency, and it's our irresponsibility. The US has been allowed to borrow so much money to the point that we can never hope to actually pay it back. That the only way the US can avoid declaring bankruptcy is through, guess what? Inflation. Think about it. Inflation erodes the value of a dollar. So if you have $38 trillion in debt, but the US dollar experiences 10% inflation, then you just eliminated 10% of your debt. You just eliminated $3.8 trillion. This is why, and this is what no one tells you, but this is the real reason the US needs to keep inflation relatively high and never go below 2% a year. And something else I haven't even mentioned yet is that inflation makes the stock market look like it's growing when it's not. The stock market has made a lot of gains in the past 6 years, that's true, but they look even higher than they really are because of inflation. Look how much lower the stock market has gone up in the past 6 years if you adjust for inflation. And our only hope is inflation, because outside of inflation, the US government is making no effort to address the debt. And when I say no effort, I mean no effort. This is how much debt we'd be in if the US government were a person.
I would like to raise my debt limit.
Excuse me?
My debt limit, I'd like to raise it.
Because the last time I checked, Mr. Smith, you were in serious debt.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Figure we should raise that limit.
Yeah, it says here you're $140,270 in debt.
Right, so I figured we should raise that limit to about $170,000. I just bought a 60-inch flat screen. Have you ever been to Australia?
No.
Leaving tomorrow, mate. You should check it out. Great parasailing.
Do you have some new income that I don't know about?
No, still making about 21 grand a year.
Okay. And are you still spending $38,000 a year?
That's what it says.
So you're adding $17,000 a year in debt.
Wow, is that what it comes out to? Debt limit going up. Ding!
Have you made any cuts in your expenses?
Oh, of course, yes. My wife and I cut $380 out of our annual budget. It's $380. It's brutal. Huh.
Okay, so you're adding. Okay, you don't see how bad this is, do you?
I cut my budget by $380. Are you kidding?
I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. We can't help you.
My wife is going to lose it. I mean, $380 was bad enough. I mean, this is going to end our marriage. We stopped talking to each other for a month. The baby was totally freaked out.
Wait, you have kids?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sign there.
All right. Aren't kids a blessing? I mean, she's got plenty of time to deal with all this, right?
Absolutely.
Are we all set?
You're all set.
All right. Let's go, kiddo. We got to meet Mommy at the car store. Here we go. I think this is yours.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Thanks. Hey!
That's exactly right. We just grow the debt to give to the next generation, which is Gen Z, and we make the poor pay for it through inflation. Since inflation makes prices rise, it helps boost company profits, which helps boost the stock market, so again, the wealthy are doing okay. Inflation hurts the poor disproportionately, because they have the least amount of money to spend when the price of consumer goods goes up for everybody. But this economic party might end sooner than we think, because countries are trying to replace the dollar as the US reserve currency. Do you know what the US's biggest export was for the first time in history at the end of last year? Gold. And why do you think that is? Because people are seeing gold as a more stable bet than the US dollar. The BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are all trying to replace the US dollar. And that's to say nothing of how the euro is already the reserve currency for 20% of the world. For the past few decades, use of the US dollar has been falling. And remember, it's the US being the global reserve currency that allows us to borrow so much money to stimulate the stock market in the first place. When that goes away and the check becomes due, well, we won't have the money to pay for it, meaning there'll be no more artificial prop-up for the stock market. And not one of these 5 artificial pillars can support the US economy when actual productivity goes down, when our actual goods and services don't get purchased, as the Buffett indicator tells us is happening right now. And as more and more Americans feel like they can't afford anything because of inflation, and tariffs prevent countries from buying American goods, that threat is becoming more and more imminent. We are essentially relying on the beneficence of 4 US companies to keep this country even semi-solvent, even as we're paying $3 billion a day on our debt, not to pay down the debt, but to keep the debt as the exact amount that it currently is at. We're paying $3 billion on like minimum interest payments. And here's the scariest part about the whole situation. These 5 pillars that keep the US economy afloat don't only delay an inevitable recession, but they make the recession much bigger. It's like imagine building a dam's wall twice as high so it can accumulate twice as much water. When that dam breaks, the crash is going to be twice as big. These 5 artificial economic buoys are letting problems that would normally result in a crash accumulate, so they can result in an even bigger one. So, if you have money in the stock market, does this mean you should get immediately out? Well, in 1986, the market was also extremely overpriced. I mean, not as overpriced as it is today, but still. And the stock market still went up another 100% before it crashed the next year. John Maynard Keynes warned us that the stock market can remain irrational longer than you can stay solvent. Buying and holding has been the best investment strategy for the past century, meaning that even if you're right that the economy is going to crash because the fundamentals are broken, and let me tell you how broken some of these fundamentals are, we can never know the exact moment the bill comes due. But it's also important to stay cognizant of Warren Buffett's admonition. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. Right now, investors are greedy, so I'd be wary about buying into a company that's at an all-time high, even if you post regularly on r/Wall Street bets, because signs are piling up one after the other about the instability of this economy. For example, the US was supposed to gain 83,000 jobs in July. Well, we lost 23,000. Inflation is still at 3.4%, well above the 2% target, which means as high as prices are, they keep going up an additional 3.4%. The average rent in Manhattan just hit an all-time high of $6,600 a month. And literally today, 30-year bond yields reached their highest peak since 2007, meaning people are bracing for high inflation. So when the economy is in as volatile as a place as it is now, you have to be very careful who you listen to. There are a lot of finance influencers who've been peddling a lot of really shady crypto exchanges or free cash scams to make money. In fact, Free Cash actually reached out to sponsor me a couple times, but enough of a cursory investigation told me this is not something that I think is a good use of your money. Like, I never want to advertise something to you that I don't like or would use. I think there are a lot of people out there who just want to look like they know how to invest.
Oh my god, the stock market is literally closed on the weekends. I swear to God, these new finance creators, man.
Not her saying she invested on the weekend. Oh, that's so bad. I swear, people buy like half a stock on Robinhood and act like this.
Today we're going to talk about the crossover and intersection between environmentalism, social justice, and education, in combination with raising awareness, leveraging your platform and influence, and investing in a sustainable future.
Someone said they went from $3 to $3.07 in 2 weeks. I'm up $8 in Nvidia. Watch how you talk to me. If you're up $8 in Nvidia, maybe consider taking those $8 as profit now. Because when this AI bubble takes down the whole economy, no one should be celebrating.
We just bet against the American economy.
Fuck yeah, we did. Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Which means if we're right, people lose homes, people lose jobs, people lose retirement savings, people lose pensions. Here's a number, every 1% unemployment goes up, 40,000 people die. Did you know that?
down 21%.
Because we're now down 43%.
What in the world is happening on Wall Street?
Under pressure, Yahoo down 8.5%, Cisco 6.5%.
It was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
This comment says we're about to have another 2008, and a lot of people lost everything in 2008. If 2008 never happened, my grandparents could have kept their business, and I could have gone to college. Right. My dad lost his job in the crisis. He fell back into alcoholism and broke up our family. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that happens in a recession. Which is why it's not just finance bros checking the stock market every day now.
It's the stock market time.
Someone commented, hey, that's probably the reason you're in the Maldives.
She asked me, oh, Matt, what do you do for a living? I said, I have 500 companies working for me. Which in boy math means I own 0.5 of a single share of the S&P 500.
Someone said, that's $37, by the way. Way to go, bro. Way to go. But now I want to address something that I hear a lot. Like this Instagram reel went viral.
What's the smartest thing a 20-year-old can do with $1,000? This is so simple. Put it into the stock index and forget about it for the rest of your life until you retire. The stock market, an index like the S&P 500, grows at anywhere from 10 to 12% per year, every year of your life. There are some years where it goes flat, but if you look at the last 100 plus years, it's delivered almost double-digit returns the majority of the time. So that is how you retire wealthy. You take the 1,000 and you add a little bit more every week, generally 50% of your salary, and you retire with over $1 million when you're 65.
Someone commented, hey, Kevin, Zoomers don't even have $50 in their bank accounts. But even if you do have like 1,000, a lot of people are frustrated because they don't want to have extra money when they're dying of brain cancer. They want to not worry about starving or being able to pay rent today. Which, by the way, if you do the math and you put $1,000 in an index fund when you're 20, by the time you're 65, it'll be $20,000, which is a lot of money, but a far cry from $1 million. And on that point, stress actually shortens your life. So you'll never be able to retire with Kevin O'Leary's $1 million if you die young because you were so stressed out, because you were so poor, because you put the only $1,000 you had into the stock market.
Did you know that if you invest in a 401k when you're 23 years old and then put 10% of every single paycheck into your 401k, then by the time you're 72 and you retire and your brain doesn't work anymore and your body hurts and you can't walk and your whole day is just going to the doctor's office, you'll have like $5 million.
Like someone commented, I can't wait to be a millionaire at the same time I become bedridden. Then when I'm that old, I can finally run for Congress. Because you could also get to 71 and die and have nothing. Someone said even the dollar store ain't $1 anymore. You know, I used to think the dollar store like could only sell things for $1. Like they'd be shut down if they ever went to like $1.50. But this economy has made that impossible. Someone said, Gen Z really loves thrifting. Yeah, or maybe that's all we can afford. This lady posted, when you hate working a 9 to 5, but then you remember the state of the economy, and with all the layoffs, you don't want to be next. Someone said, girl, I worked through lunch, took evening calls with AIPAC. With AIPAC? With Israel? I don't know why she's taking calls with Israel, and I still got laid off. I feel like Israel could have hooked you up with a job. It just reminds me of my favorite Instagram reel of all time.
Marry, F, kill, communism, socialism, capitalism.
Oh, I would marry capitalism, okay. Israel.
Folded under zero pressure. I looked up AIPAC without an I to see what I'm missing, and it says it's a geopolitical union of Asia and the Pacific Island nations. Wow, I mean, that must have been an important phone call then. So I guess the lesson is, if even the diplomat coordinating the relationships between the Asian and Pacific Island countries can get laid off in this economy, none of us is safe.
Teens can't get jobs because they have no open positions, because adults are working these jobs. Because they can't get a job in their field of study with their degree. Or they have a job in their field of study with their degree, but it doesn't pay them enough to live, so they need a second job. That's simple. Everybody understands this, except for the news, apparently. It's not because they're lazy and don't want to wake up before noon for their job. Adults can't even get jobs right now, and we're surprised that teens aren't getting summer jobs? It's not rocket science.
Someone pointed out that's because no one's retiring. In fact, people are coming out of retirement to take entry-level jobs. All those feel-good stories they run about 80-year-olds working the counter at McDonald's are actually dystopian. Retail jobs also expect 24/7 availability now, which students can't do because they're in school. I'm 22. What adult with a degree wants to get a job at a grocery store?
Entry-level jobs in the United States of America are vanishing right now, and alarm bells are sounding over the state of the United States job market and the economy writ large. According to Forbes, in the past 4 years, entry-level jobs have tanked 73%, the number of them. Inexperienced candidates are now welcomed in just 1 out of every 50 job openings out there. That's down from 1 in 15 in 2022. There are also 27% fewer salaried openings out there. So for new college graduates, good luck. There are just no jobs willing to hire entry-level folks. And the jobs that are, so many people are applying due to the scarcity in the number of jobs out there that it's nearly impossible to break in and get an interview. I mean, I talk to people every day, young people every day. Those who are graduating college, those who are even graduating master's program. And they struggle to find a job, let alone a good paying job, because they just don't exist anymore.
Someone said employers ask for a degree now for like $16 an hour positions. Boomers got it all and ruined everything for future generations. Immigrants are stealing our jobs, they say. What jobs? I have 3 degrees, 27 years in experience, and I was rejected by Barnes & Noble.
This is the absolute worst economy I have ever experienced in my adult life. And maybe I'm the only person who says this here. I have more friends out of work who have been out of work over the last 2 years than at any other time in my life. And it is across various professions. I'm talking about friends who are engineers. I'm talking about friends who work in environmental policy. I'm talking about all of my friends in Hollywood and journalism and everything else like that. Sometimes I hear these conversations and I laugh because I get the text message. They're like, yo, who are these people talking to? I was just on the phone with a friend of mine who was a producer who worked on a commercial for the Super Bowl 6 months ago. She's like, I have been out of work for 6 months. I've been working since I was 16 when I got hired at MTV and have never been out of work this long. That is the Americans right now who are furious. And that's before I get to my students, many of whom, as you said, they can get jobs, but they don't have move out of the house jobs. And that's what you want. Everybody can go get a job. Everybody can go work at Chipotle, even if you're in management. But if I can't pay the 3 months that I need to get an apartment in Baltimore, let alone New York City or Atlanta or Los Angeles, I am furious. The degree to which Republicans and Democrats have failed to address any of these issues is why you have so many people angry right now.
Someone said when a family of 4 goes to Taco Bell and it's $75, there's a problem. And this lady said, my pockets are tighter making over $100,000 in this economy than they were when I was making $45,000 some years ago. Back then, I could buy a house with a $45,000 salary. Why do I make the highest salary of my life, but I'm living paycheck to paycheck like I'm 21 again? Hey, why are 21-year-olds catching strays here? It's kind of true, though. All politics aside, Zoran Mamdani and Donald Trump were both elected because Americans were hurting, and voters ranked affordability as their #1 issue.
I think 9 more terrifying words are actually, I worked all day and can't feed my family.
Someone said I had to pick between cat food and gas for my car today.
It is the 3rd biggest month for job losses. But not just that, the June job market was revised down another 37,000 jobs. Economists are calling these numbers a, quote, big kick in the guts because we are actively losing jobs in a stagnant economy.
A full tank of gas is $150 here. $150? Are you serious? The only acceptable way gas costs $150 is if your gas is being loaded up by like Doja Cat and Hank Williams Jr. doing a dual rendition of Your Cheatin' Heart while Matthew Santoro reads you 50 new fun facts. That was a niche one at the end there.
Here are 50 amazing facts.
Oh, the economy isn't that bad. The cost of living crisis isn't that bad. You have homeless coworkers. It doesn't matter if you're working in finance. It doesn't matter if you're working a retail job. I can almost guarantee you that you have homeless coworkers because 40 to 60% of homeless people are employed and rent is unaffordable. Look at the numbers here, okay? Like the minimum cost of a 1-bedroom apartment in the US is around $1,500. And a lot of states, you're really lucky if you could get that, okay? $1,500. You need to make 3 times the rent, $4,500 a month. That is $28 an hour. $28 an hour in the US is like the baseline bare minimum living wage. But our federal minimum wage is
$7.25 an hour.
You know what $7.25 an hour gets you working full time?
$1,160
a month. The minimum for an apartment, again, remember?
$4,500 a month.
And we're not even factoring in taxes into all of this shit. I don't care what your job is, there is no reason that anyone working 40 hours a week, slaving their life away, should not be able to at least afford a fucking 1-bedroom apartment.
That's insane, and someone asked how many of us are just one paycheck away from being homeless. And homeless doesn't always mean that you're on the street, keep that in mind. I just realized if it wasn't for my merciful, loving parents, I would be homeless. So much of Gen Z is asking, why did I have to become an adult at the worst time possible? We're like the millennials 2.0. It really feels like things are so different from lockdown, and they really are. Like, lockdown represented the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in history.
Americans are on the brink of bankruptcy, and this money story just keeps going from bad to worse. Because first is inflation, which is up in the month of August at 3.67%. And you might think to yourself, well, that's no big deal, it's just 3.67%. But this is your money, and it means for every $1,000 that you make, you're really only able to buy $963 worth of goods because that remaining $300 and change is just inflated away. And to make matters worse, the inflation in our economy isn't confined to just avocado toast or the occasional cup of coffee. It's actually taken root in the most important things that we buy every day, like gasoline and the cost of keeping a roof over your head. Gasoline prices in this country are getting out of control, and rent prices have increased every month for the last 40 months. But wait, it gets worse. Because the Federal Reserve, who is in charge of making sure that the economy doesn't go spiraling down the toilet drain, which, newsflash, they're not very good at their job. They're in charge of combating inflation, and they're trying to, and right now their only option to make that happen is by raising interest rates. Which means if you still don't have a house but you're close, if you buy one now, the cost of your mortgage is going to be higher than it's ever been compared to what the cost of your home is, at least if we look at the last 10 years. But thanks to inflation, in many states, the cost of the home itself is close to or at all-time highs. But wait, it gets even worse, because the Federal Reserve recently released studies showing that household savings in the United States has been going down every month for the last 2 years, and Americans collectively have been drawing down on their savings at a rate of around $100 billion a month. So your money now buys you less stuff, while the Federal Reserve raises interest rates against you if you're trying to buy a home, while the cost of rents keep going up every month, while at the same time student loans are coming into play, so you're going to have less money in your pocket, and your money doesn't go as far to begin with because of all the inflation. And that's it, I'm done. That is the bleak state of the United States. You gotta tell them everything. Tell them about corporate profits. There's more. Because it would be one thing if Americans as a whole were entering into financial dark times altogether as one United States, but that's not what's actually happening. Because in 2022 and 2023, corporate profits have been at or near all-time highs. A small portion of our society is doing better than they've ever done before. And I personally am all for getting rich. I want to have more money. I want you to have more money. I think we should live in a country where we all have the opportunity to be doing better tomorrow than we did yesterday, collectively. Some of us aren't going to make it, but if we live in a place where all of us have the chance to, that's exciting. But that's not what's happening. A small group of people are getting richer not by providing more value to society, but by extracting value from it. For example, Blackstone, a private equity firm on Wall Street, led by this man, Stephen Schwarzman, who's the CEO of Blackstone. This guy took home over $250 million in profits in 2022. Pfizer's CEO, Albert Bourla, got a 36% pay increase in 2022 and took home $33 million. And we all know why Pfizer did so well in 2021 and 2022. And if that's not disaster capitalism, I don't know what is. Because what's happening in the United States definitely feels like it's unsustainable. And it also sadly feels like the government is on the side of corporations rather than the people. Because remember the Pfizer CEO that took home $33 million last year? In that same year, 2022, Pfizer signed a $3.2 billion deal with the US government, meaning our tax dollars are funding Pfizer and helping their company hit record profits, allowing them to give their CEOs massive pay boosts with money that comes from US taxpayers. And it's really frustrating because I wasn't a great student in school, but I seem to remember the role of government being doing something like regulating big businesses to protect the people from big businesses overstepping their bounds and doing things that are just not good for society. Right now, in 2023, it seems like government is aligned with those same corporations at the expense of the American people. So the question is, what are we all going to do if things keep going this way? Is the answer stop buying the avocado toast, which is keeping us all in poverty? Or maybe we all just start collecting rainwater so we can grow our gardens off-grid to sustain ourselves?
Actually, that's illegal in 11 states.
It's illegal to collect rainwater in 11 states?
You can't do it.
Are you kidding me?
Not kidding. And actually, you live in one of those 11 states.
Well, shit.
I just want to buy a home and live life. And now that seems unobtainable. Someone rightly pointed out the worst part is this economic slump is not just the US. It's Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the UK. I have cut down on literally every expense and I can barely make rent. And guess what? My student loans resume next month.
We are in a depression right now, but the only reason it's not called that is because the wealthy people are wealthier than they've ever been. It's not a depression for the rich people are doing great. During the Great Depression, the average cost of a home was about $4,900, which today is equivalent to about $90,000. It was around 3 times the average person's wages. Today, in 2026, the average cost of a home is around $410K, which is about 8 times the average person's wages.
Someone said we're in the silent depression. Because oftentimes, let's be real, the stock market is just based on vibes. Like, even if a company is doing well, but analysts expected them to be doing even better, their stock price will go down. And if they were expected to do worse, but they don't do as bad, their stock price goes up.
Our company's earnings beat expectations. Hooray! The stock will go up. But because analysts expected us to beat expectations by more, the stock is tanking. Right! We need to beat the expectations of the expectation. The stock declined so much that people began buying the stock and increased the stock. Yes, losing stock value makes it gain stock value. People feel the stock is overinflated and have begun selling the stock. Icky hyperinflated stock. Bad stock. Good news. Someone with a lot of money said the stock is good now. One person's opinion should be able to dictate the value of a company and stock. Oh no, that person just wanted to sell the stock at a higher price. The stock is tanking again. Investing is a science and not at all gambling. Our company decided to become an AI company even though we sell shoes. The stock is up 10x. That is a perfect reflection of the health of our company and stock.
But that means that all that needs to happen to precipitate a massive change in the economy is a change in vibes. If people start thinking the economy is cooked, the stock market will act on that, and then the dam breaks, and we'll all have to try and find shelter. Do you think we're in a good economy? Is it good for you? I'll respond to as many comments as I can, so let me know. And thank you to our amazing patrons. Thank you, Bob, Eric, Guy, Matt, Razan, Keaton, Max, Jae, Little Jase, Aaliyah, Sami Mohammad, Avery, Beth, Love, Wendy, Pine, Eli, Silver, Caroline, Alex, Pun, Zak, Oz, Neptune, Coco, Drake, C, Jenny, Best, Michael, J, South, Sonder, Kelly, Dylan, Brett, Ari, V, Guy, Bond, Doge, Len, Edang, Job, Angel, Rachel, Ariel, Viper, Ava, Alex, Comfort, Puffy, Marshall, Christina, Brandy, Odell, Jackson, Ellen, Caroline, Woody, Kelp, Deanna, Ree, Aaron, and welcome to our newest patrons, the Addison Digital Museum and Sokotoan Soldier. I'm so excited you guys are here. Thank you for helping me make videos like this. I'll go head over to Patreon and chat with you now.